So let me ask Marge Käsper to come up front, our second speaker for today. Do you have it? Yeah, right. While we're getting set up, just a reminder to those of you joining us via Zoom that you can put your questions in the chat. That's worked quite well before. I think that technical difficulties have been resolved. Great. So our second speaker is Marge Käsper, who is a lecturer of French and linguistics and a researcher in French studies here at the University of Tartu. And the title of her talk is Inside in Immunity, Outside in Community, Vaccination. I said Pandemic Philosophy and Popular Poetry. I think mine is less updated than the one that's up there. Thank you. Welcome.
Hello to everybody, and I changed one word in my title. I thought pandemic, it makes a better alliteration with philosophy and popular poetry. But it's maybe also a little bit more precise. But actually, I want to speak a lot about not really speak about poetry. Well, I defined it. Poetry also in my way, but mainly I will speak about official guidelines campaign by French government this year in March about the right attitudes to have in order to protect oneself and to survive in ongoing pandemic situation, to stay home and not to invite guests, not to go out after 8 o'clock, and if you go you have to have special attestation, and if outside you have you have to wear mask and not to go out for one's region and so on. And then later, second things or topic I will speak about is a book by Italian philosopher Roberto Esposito, Communities, Protection and Negation of the Life. That was released in France almost exactly the same time as the slogan, in March this year, and so for me it made some kind of parallel reading. And also this book was published in Italian already in 2002 and in English translation in 2011. But this philosophical analysis, of biopower, it became really extremely topical in the context of COVID. As Esposito himself also points out in his preface to French edition, that is cited almost to be in most of the presentations of the book in France. For instance, in philosophy magazine Philomag, they start with this sentence that's from Esposito, that Ray, the author, Ray is the author who happens to see what he said in a book comes true, writes Esposito in his preface, and so on. Le Monde is even more explicit in actuality, naming in the beginning of this presentation this war metaphor used, cited very much in France, because it was used by Macron. So the beginning is Immunitas, a book on immunity as a political paradigm by the Italian philosopher, may have appeared in 2002. In his country, it is extremely topical in the midst of war against the COVID-19 and in the midst of vaccination campaigns seen as the only possible way out of global crisis. So, and then this the beginning by Esposito. I was focused on the French reception of the book, of this book, and also some text written in French about Esposito earlier books and general ideas, and I put them in parallel with the reception of the slogan released by French government. My point is that, I wanted to go back. Point is that they both happen to say even more than was meant initially. Well, it's a paradox that for philosopher it's clear. It's really said that, never indeed the vocabulary of immunity has been so familiar to us as it is today, to the point that swallowing up all politics, the immune paradigm, as Esposito said, has become an axis of rotation around which our individual collective experience revolves, and it is indeed the project is to redefine and reveal the unthought of politics today. What I have to explain, the what does it has to do with French guidelines? The short answer is that the design of these guidelines was maybe well planned by public communication team, but maybe rather unthought philosophically, I would say. But I think in a way it's interesting how the slogan aroused more questions than it answered, really, about how, in what words to speak about the protection of lives that institute a community. Actually, while the slogan was not really planning to complicate, reactions to the slogan pointed out quite well the ambiguity discussed by Esposito and revealed this complication. Now I show some reactions on Twitter, where people were they were saying, what's gloom? Well, it's clowns, and they were laughing out loud, lol. And also so there was a huge controversy, and of course there was creation of series of illustrative memes, and also form of rewording the slogan, and I call this popular poetry, so, in my way. And the title of my paper, this is rewording by myself. I didn't find it somewhere, but as I read these two events together, so that's my rewording. But why about this laughing out loud, and why I think it is a weird PR idea is one thing. Now I go to Latvia. While preparing this paper, I saw an interesting actual broadcasting about Latvia. At least in Estonia, I've seen that in Latvia it's really hard. There's this restriction, amendments, everything. This communication is very severe. And then suddenly I saw a series of clips made by by Latvian government, but also by popular singers and ordinary people, were about how to get vaccinated, how to wear masks, and so on. It was really fun. Well, of course, also the comment by this Latvian reporter, who's a particular guy, he said that no one knows whether these videos get more people vaccinated and wear more masks, but one thing is clear: you can not only have restrictions and amendments. It was his idea. Well, actually, in France, it was no humorous intention in French government campaign. It was serious, but however, one can understand that this perfect parallelism of two words. It sounds actually it sounds pretty much didactic, to the point that to my mind came small verses I learned in school about how to behave myself in traffic, to be a good girl, little girl. linnast väljas maanteeverbel, käise vasakpoolsel serval, siis sa õigesti just teed. I know it forever. Yeah. And so it, well, like for little girls. In France, it's serious, and it's maybe also related to a general paradigm, this educating people. I can cite one paper in Disco Studies who has compared school books in Germany and in France. That in Germany, school books, they try to be more young people friendly, and to this kind of guidelines to in books. And in France, they are rather abstract general values and not much joking. Well, a serious civic education paradigm. Yeah. Well, now, but my point was that. But well, this parallelism indeed it gives good basis for this very natural playful rewording and rewording mechanism in discourse. For instance, what I found on Facebook as inside with my close people, also with yours, for example, or the others. Well, more concretely, the remakes. Actually, I think remakes of the slogan. They vary all some aspects of questions discussed by this Esposito, or maybe we could say also that about Esposito that his work is also a kind of surprising rewording of terms and relations. Well, between politics and medicine. Well, he showed that the growing confluence of political and biological realms, as pointed out in Le Monde, for example, while political and military representations have not ceased since the progress of vaccination in the 19th century to supply medical literature with warm imaginary. Henceforth, Esposito shows that it is medical semantics which dictates its law to politics in recent times. About well, also rewording also a term of immunity. I cite Esposito undertakes the genealogy of the notion of immunity from Roman law to contemporary biopolitics. He showed the deep ambivalence of the notion of immunity, which both protects and threatens, since it implies observing part of the evil foreign body to guard against a greater evil. And about the community, actually all presentations they remind that presentations of the book of Esposito. So this is what I saw on this rewording of these memes. Memes, yeah. But when speaking about Esposito, the presentation reminded that immunitas is the second part of the reflection. Began with Communitas, a book released in France in 2000, where Robert Esposito links immunity and community, which share the same etymological root, munus, which in Latin means both the gift and to have to. The community is thus bound to by the law of donation and debt, but also by the risk of involved in any sharing. Well, in brief, a legal definition of immunity is that if you do or have to do a donation, you can declare yourself, or you can be declared except of sharing the risks that others share outside in common. You see here. Moreover, Esposito showed that the liberal philosophy has created an impression that one can have right to isolate himself from the society. Well, maybe one type here. And that's why in Philomag, for example, the presentation says that immunity is what takes back the community project, but at the same time makes it exist. One subtitle in Le Monde is speaks of community also in terms that democratic law is dangerous. Well, so this discussions that actually I go on because they say this is the book. Well, the second chapter of the book is less convincing, but however, it's very interesting to read everything. And what is said really the main project, and it's by everybody, is in fact the reflection about community, which is neither based on resemblance nor on the fear of war of all against all. As has been indicated by French philosopher Frédéric Neyrat already earlier, in one text, Esposito showed that not only we will need to take into consideration the biopolitics framework today, but proposes also what Foucault would have missed, an elucidation of the process of reversal of the biopolitical into its opposite. That would be necessary to perform a politics of life and not of death. Well, this is another meme of the same, always in this. But the idea is, this is why Esposito discusses the contrasting and yet necessary relationship between concepts of immunity and community. And well, you can see here in these pictures this idea that how to behave community. It's not easy. Absolute fear leads to extermination, and well, how to resolve these relations. Then these presentations, they go on, and well, you know, they explain that Esposito's general idea is that it's better to introduce an evil for a little bit stranger in the body of human or in the body of society. In case of migration and so, and to a figure to explain it, then it really makes understand it's a maternity metaphor. There is a little stranger element in the body of a woman when speaking about pregnancy. Woman being pregnant, there is a little element in a body of a woman. But if the body integrates it properly, it gives birth to a new life without destroying the previous one. Yeah, here, well, the wordplay was just this joke, which actually this inside with Durex and outside with Castex. That circulated the most. Well, of course, it's the easy-coming joke with the name of Prime Minister Castex, so it's really easy to invent. But I think, once again, I think this joke is pretty much in its place. The condom preservative is indeed a device to control the bodily relation to others, while letting the other inside without a big further danger. So, well, and it's true. Well, Castex, he has to manage this outside relation in society. How to do it? It's not evident. It's not easy. How to manage immunity and community attitudes in a civic way? Well, to conclude, I cite maybe just one more text that was actually written a year, exactly 1 year before the second book was released in France. It was in March 2020, as well in Journal of Literature and Ideas and Arts on Natanado. There was a text or this special topic. Well, what's happening now when pandemics breaks out, and there was a presentation and text reflection about Esposito's idea that ended. Now I cite the ending of the text, that more than ever the community is coming. The idea was that then speaking about literature, and to one side disease can separate, on the other side the disease can affect also everyone, because it's well, it was citing about Christa Wolf media, and this disease was affecting everyone because it's less a sign of social crisis but a political crisis that is linked to everyone. So this ambivalent relation of terms, it's, well, it's also, but the idea what was well, to conclude, it's about this once again this community aspect, how to construct this. Well, that is what was intriguing and interesting to cite in these presentations. So, thank you.
Thank you. So we have some time for questions. Questions? Sure, go ahead, Marco.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marge. It's interesting to hear a little bit about this kind of other discourse, in the public media and so on. So you gave us a few examples, but I wonder, do you think that those examples were taken on board somehow? Did the politicians react somehow to that? How far have those kind of reaction been really brought into, I don't know, the official public space maybe? I mean, do you have really a separation of that kind of public space with the official mainstream debate and discourse?
Reactions to the slogan?
Yes, the reactions that you showed us. Has there been a real debate on that? Has it been a topic, or does it really only...
Not enormous, but yeah, there was a series of articles and so on, and reactions I showed, they were, well, yeah, on Twitter, but responding to Prime Minister's saying. So that is well, kind of debate on Twitter. Well, it's not so enormous, yeah, but well, in France and in Western Europe's politics, it's made on Twitter, so it's kind of debate.
And this slogan, was that also discussed in main important newspapers, or was there also some kind of high-level discussion on that, or not really?
Actually, it was discussed not in Le Monde, not in big newspapers, but well, smaller newspapers, and there was, well, as usually, it was commented that on Twitter it is creating a lot of joke and lot of this. Newspapers, they comment Twitter. Well, this social media, it's very common.
Yeah, thank you also for having a side look at the Latvian scene.
Yeah,
I didn't know this video actually. I would like to see it, but I also know whether you have noticed this the campaign which used, I mean, placard campaign. What's it in English? Huh? Poster campaign, yes, which used as a matrix those American posters from the Second World War with the housewife, you know, the strong housewife fighting at the home front and strengthening the backs of the soldiers at the real front in Europe, that was used as a matrix for a couple of posters that were shown everywhere. You can still see them, and of course that instigated a very harsh discussion because also the aesthetics of those posters were somehow also reminded on Stalinism in a way. You know, that's the same age. So that's quite interesting, but I just wanted also to mention that in Latvia, the background of all this was actually the fact that a minister had been fired in spring because she obviously had acted too slow in purchasing vaccination for the whole population. And so she was fired, another minister was nominated, and then the vaccination came, and after 2 months it was clear that nobody wanted them. You know, and then the whole propaganda was accelerated by this very much. So, yeah, my question is, did you compare, I mean, what happens in public spaces also a little bit, like you took this Latvian example, we have seen the French things. Did you make a systematic analysis of these?
Well, for Latvia, it was really an example I saw on Estonian in Estonian broadcast. I really don't know much about Latvia. It was, but I was wondering, but why? Is it reality, or is it really so that I hear always news about amendments and it was, well, never anyone spoke about amendments in Estonia, but in Latvia all the time I thought that you have to pay if you don't wear mask or something. And, yeah, and there was it the representation, or was it really how it's felt in Latvia? I really don't know. And in this context, it was interesting that, but it was also made by this reporter in Latvia, who is I think he's also kind of specific view on Latvia. He sometimes also makes jokes, and well, he speaks a lot about Latvia. And I was wondering, well, at least it was interesting that he put in parallel this earlier very severe representation of Latvia, and then he, in the end, he said that, well, it's not the only solution. Actually, without mentioning this changing of minister or some things, but it was just putting in parallel that, okay, these clips were made by Latvian government, but there was also some other clips made by singers and ordinary people. So that was kind of temptation, and you can't know whether it brings more people or no. Yeah.
But I must say that for me, something it feels like what happened, how I perceived it in Latvia, really feels more like a public theater. So it's very aggressive at times. It's very divisive at times. Well, especially on social media, very divisive. You have to be careful what you say and so on and so on. But still, it's not so much dominating the real life feeling. We talked about this over lunch, that if you compare that to experiences many of us made, for example, staying for a longer time in Germany or Austria, then it's different. In Latvia, I felt nothing of this pressure from the public. I mean, you have these aggressive debates, but you personally don't feel so much under pressure, which seems to be different when you are in a society like the German one, for example.
Well, thank you for this comment. Yeah, because all these comparisons between cultures, it is my domain. Yeah, and well, to ask in what words and we speak about problems and what is representation and, well, what it does actually. Well, one thing is what is said in media, in newspapers, and then later on people reactions, well, you have to go on to ask or to see other sources how to what is the reality, but how we think about the disease and then this reality, it's interesting, yeah, to compare, and that these examples to put in contrast, it always opens, on both sides.
Yeah, I have a question. As someone who's worked on Esposito for a number of years, I thought that one of the memes that you showed, I think it was something from a zombie movie on one side, and then there was the prison on the other side. That's a fantastic shortcut to Esposito's thought, but it's complicated too on some level, so I don't know if you can just sort of oblige me like 15 seconds or so, because it's in the top, the idea being, I guess, that those that are immune or have been immunized are in prison, right? And those below are not immunized and they're not in prison, and therefore they're a community. You see what I mean? So and that's one way you might read it, is like if you ask, like, where's the community? The community would be, well, it would in one reading of Esposito, it would be the bottom and not the top, because the top is where the immunized hang out. But the cost of immunity is the death of community, right? So they're in this dialectical relationship, right? But so that's great. But there's also something in the bottom that explains why the top is also a community. It's just that the community there's an interval. So on one hand you have community over here and immunity over here, but the choice is never between them. It's sort of degrees as you get closer to immunity or as you get closer to community. So the idea is that the more vital a community is, the more it looks like the bottom. And so you have to be more, you have to be really kind of comfortable with conflict, is sort of the thought that I, thank you for obliging me on this, but because I've thought about it for a while. But that's just really spot on, if you just had to like sum it up, you would have it. So thank you for bringing that.
Thank you for the comment. Yeah,
No.
It was. I was thinking about all things, but you worded it really
well.
Really
thank you.
well.
It's only because I've spent too much time on this, but it's just really fantastic.
That's why I wanted to put them together.
It's fantastic. No, it really is.
From what journal is it? From what? What is the source?
It's an internet source.
So yeah, it's on internet. Yeah, it was on. I even don't remember. It was actually. Well, it's a famous. Well, I don't know famous or not, but this caricaturist Zajčuk, who so there's someone who it's not the occasional thing that he has a thought and it's not. But it was cycling on text,
But of course, thanks to my son, I recognize in that picture where the brothers saw Dalton. So this TV show or bande dessinée. So it's very, very well. And all the point there is how to escape from prison. So they try in every episode of a series, they try to escape from prison. So with brothers Dalton. So you can look at the reference. It's really very good. So, this the Daltons.
Thank you.
And the next stage is the one.
So thank you, a round of applause for Marge Käsper.